So you started a small business. You've grown from a one-man team to a full staff. Business is booming. You can't seem to take a vacation. So what do you do? Well, this week on Motivation and Confidence, we speak with John Sheridan, author of The Perfect Business and the master of the 9 systems that provide a framework for simplifying complex tasks and systemizing your business. Stay tuned. All right, everybody worldwide, you're now tuned into Motivation and Confidence, where we help you do your daily best. And I'm your host, Tom Danger.
Sure. And thanks for having me on. So I really appreciate being here with you today. I put together the book, The Perfect Business, for entrepreneurs who have hit a wall and who are struggling with overwhelm or overload and are kind of stuck. And it's a framework that I developed to help them break through to the next level by systemizing their business and looking at things a little bit differently.
Okay. And your background is in what exactly?
Business. So I formerly ran a couple of different businesses and had a lot of success. So I was very fortunate. About 15 years ago, I was shopping around for a business to buy. And in the course of doing that, I encountered a lot of sellers who had worked all their lives and didn't really have much to show for it. When they went to sell their business, there wasn't much value there. And so I started talking to them and they started asking me things. And I fell into this by accident, really, by just starting to do that and eventually hung out a shingle. And that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years or so, is really coaching and consulting for the entrepreneur.
Okay. So when you were looking at businesses, what type of businesses would you look to actually acquire?
So I did, and I still do on behalf of my clients, search for businesses that have predictable streams of income and others predictable profits. So they're typically established businesses. Okay. And, they can be in just about any industry as long as they have some key ingredients, meaning that without the owner there, because once they sell, they're going to be gone, right? Right. We need something that's strong enough in terms of its business model and its management team and its customer base. It needs to be strong enough to live on into the future, so it actually has some value.
Got you. So would some examples of businesses be like construction businesses, possibly hospitality businesses, things of that nature?
Sure, yeah. Some of them are Main Street businesses. Oftentimes they're business-to-business oriented clients, so yeah.
And what motivates you to do what you do on a daily basis? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
The desire to help people. That's really how I stumbled into this, because when I was in my own business and managing other people's businesses, when I reflected, in fact, I was asked once, looking back, what's your proudest accomplishment? And I thought of one particular person who it was in the construction business that I was operating that began as a laborer, and he came from a difficult background. But over the years, I sort of coached him through to become an assistant project manager, then a project manager, and then a production manager. And that's really what made me most proud, the fact that I had helped him advance in his career and become a really a great person. So that's behind it all.
Good. That's good to hear. So with The Perfect Business, master the 9 systems to get control, work less, and double your profit. What are the 9 systems?
Well, you can think of your business as a collection of systems, right? And if you just think about a triangle with 3 legs, they're grouped into, first of all, the systems that you use to find and keep customers. So that's one leg of the triangle, finding and keeping customers. And then the next leg will be all about the team. And in the team, I'm including you as the owner, plus all the people that you surround yourself with and your employees, and whoever else is helping you out in the form of outside contractors, et cetera. So we'll call that the systems around the team. Okay. And then the third leg is how you direct and control the action. In other words, how do you manage it? So within each of those legs, there's 3 systems. So I could go back and review those with you really quickly. In the customers leg, the finding and keeping customers, there's basically 3 things you're worried about doing. And you set up the systems to do this. One is to find new customers. So we'll call that lead generation.
Okay.
The second thing is you have to turn those leads into customers. So that's your sales process, your sales system. And then the third thing, of course, is you got to keep them.
Right.
So what are the retention methods, the retention systems?
Right.
So those are the three that are related to finding and keeping customers, right? And then let's turn our attention to the team. There's three there. And again, as I said before, I'm including the owner themselves as one part of this. So it's what I'll call self-management systems, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. But that's one group. Then there's the systems of culture in the organization. How do you develop and maintain that? And then finally, there's everything around what I'll call performance management systems. How do you find people? How you select them? How you bring them on board, train and develop them, compensate them, manage them, all those things. All of those team systems revolve around those three elements. And then finally, you have to direct and control the action. So that begins with knowing your numbers, the financial systems. It includes how you actually create value for your customers, the delivery systems. And then how do you keep it all under control? The execution systems, the weekly and daily rhythms of communication that tie it all together.
Okay. So
that's a lot of talking, but it really boils down to those 9 things. And the key here is you need balance.
Okay.
If anything is out of balance, it'll show either in your, a roller coaster ride of up and down, make and sell, or challenges with the team, or just not building enough value.
Okay. So what holds most business owners back? Those who work hard and don't get what they want from their business.
So it's really not just about hard work, right? Because we all know people who work really, really hard, but don't have a lot to show for it. And
right.
That's kind of counterintuitive in a way, because we're all taught from a young age, if we're fortunate to have, a great surrounding, environment and parents and so forth, that if you just really work hard, good things will happen. But it's not enough. It's important, but it's not enough, because once you get the business rolling to a certain point, as it grows anymore, it's just going to start to multiply problems. And It's going to become increasingly complex, and complexity is like the enemy of profits, right? So really what's holding you back at a certain point is leverage, or lack of leverage specifically. In other words, you can't do it all yourself. You can get really good at running around and putting out fires, but that's only going to get you so far. It gets you started, it gets the ball rolling, but at a certain point, you're going to need to create leverage somehow. There's only 2 ways to do that. One is to add great people, and the other is to build great systems.
Okay. So John, if I may interrupt you. So at what point, when you're within a small business and you start to scale, what is that breaking point to where a small business owner needs to identify that their system, the current state of their system, needs to change to be able to handle the demand that's coming in? How do most business owners miss that point?
So that's a great question. And it usually happens when they can't take it anymore. But here are some of the symptoms. One is, when's the last time you took a vacation, right? If you're doing 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, yeah, as I said, hard work is part of this, but it's not the only answer. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you've got a case where you're getting frustrated with your team because they're not doing what you expect them to do or what you think they should be doing, it'll show up in mistakes, meaning especially mistakes that happen repeatedly. We're all going to have setbacks and adversity, but if you keep repeating mistakes, that's another sign. And I would say one more sign is unpredictable cash flow. If you've got a situation where you're making a lot of money, then all of a sudden it disappears on you, and you're down in the valley, and that cycle is going back and forth, then I would say, yeah, it's time to take a step back and figure out, how can I start working on different things and get some help.
Okay. So what are 4 roles that business owners must adapt so that they can build their business, so that the owner isn't doing everything? Because I know some business owners, they just feel as if they have to physically touch everything in order for it to be done right. And I know, again, that's counterproductive, but what are some roles that business owners should adapt?
Well, it works in the beginning, right? Doing everything works in the beginning, but as time goes by, you start out generally as what I'll call a technician. You're doing all this stuff. But as you add people, now you have to learn to adapt to become a new player. You need to become a manager of people, not just a technician.
Right.
So that's one transition. So manager of people would be one thing. In other words, coaching and training and developing other people. And that's a different set of skills than what you might have been doing to begin with. And that works again for a while, but if you're fortunate enough and the business continues to grow, you're going to run out of bandwidth again, and you're going to have to learn how to be a manager of managers. You're going to have to, in other words, get some other people on the team to take leadership and help you manage other people, right? So you go from a manager of manager to a leader of managers eventually, when there's less and less time doing the actual work and more time spent just on people, building, developing, training managers on your organization. So that transition is something that, if the business continues to grow and you want it to grow, those are transitions and roles that you have to learn how to take on.
Okay. So how did you amass all of this experience? Are these things that you experienced when you started out with your business or businesses years ago, or these things that you've, assessed in buying businesses? Where did this vast array of knowledge come from?
Both. It started with me, personal experience, and also in the course of just dealing with others. But I think it started with, Tom, I've made every stupid mistake in business at least once.
Okay.
That's the tough way to learn. And, I wish I had education or other resources to avoid some of those mistakes. And so that's what I try to help other people to do, is just not to do the stupid things that I've done over the years.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you didn't make those mistakes, you wouldn't be the subject matter expert that you are right now.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I am, grateful for the experience, of course. Yeah. It's a lot different than just reading about it.
I bet it is. So how culture works and how it affects business results. So are we talking about the culture of the workplace? Or are we talking about culture and diversity in the workplace?
I'm talking about the culture in the workplace. I'm talking about the rituals, the norms that people have in your team around what's expected of each other.
Okay.
I think about it this way. I mean, it's a great question, Tom, because it's an area that a lot of business owners really have difficulty thinking about or understanding, because it's kind of abstract. A lot of people think that culture means, we give everybody pizza on Fridays or something, or it's,
right,
it's perks, or it's a ping pong table or whatever. But what we're really talking about is how people treat each other. What are the expectations? And if you think about it kind of like in reverse, like if you want a certain result in your life and in your business, what's going to create those results? Well, it's your behaviors, right? It's the behaviors of your team, the things that they do every day. And to a large extent, these are habits, right? A lot of our behavior is just habitual. For better or worse, it's habitual. But what drives those behaviors? Well, that's driven largely by our attitudes. It's by the thinking, good or bad, that we do. And it's by the decisions that we make. So what in turn drives all of that? Well, it's a community. Your company is like a community, and then that means that it has norms, and that's, again, those are expectations about how we behave with each other.
Okay. And
those norms can come in a couple forms, right? They could be spoken norms. In other words, they could be explicit, like here's the rule, here's what we do. We return all of our emails within the same day because we respect each other and we respect our customers. Or it could be an unspoken norm, which is a lot of it. It's just, when everyone looks around and see who's leaving at 4:00, well, then it must be okay to leave at 4:00 and we'll go.
Right.
So go ahead.
I have a question that's a little bit outside of the box here. So we're discussing, small businesses and growing pains and what they need to do as they go to scale, and looking at your system to help them basically sustain and become more profitable and be a better business. what do we do in the instances where you have gone to scale, your business has made more money, but then, your particular product or your service isn't as in demand as much as what it used to be. And now it's time to trim the fat, so to speak, right? So when we're talking about culture, in your experience, so how do you keep the morale up? And how is the message sent back to the managers and the employees that, we need everybody to come in with just as much drive as what we did when we were a multi-million-dollar company to not as much today?
In the case of a shrinking organization, right?
Yes.
Yeah, difficult. But I think it begins with the leader being crystal clear about his or her vision for the future.
Okay.
Right. Even though that vision may not be as spectacular or out of reach as it once was, it still needs to be concrete. He or she needs to paint that picture really clearly and vividly and inspire confidence around that. And then connect that vision to the day-to-day actions that are needed. So I think that's where it begins. And I also believe that it requires two other things from the leader. One is constant reinforcement, constant reminding everybody about why we are here. What is our purpose? What is the goal? And again, drawing those connections between the daily activities, no matter what they might be, to the bigger picture. And some empathy. Okay. Meaning, don't sit in the office and shoot out an email and think that's going to inspire anybody. It's got to be one-to-one, one-to-many, but it's got to be face-to-face. Okay. Does that answer your question?
110%. Thank you so much. Now, we're going to have some fun questions here. I like to ask you, what's your favorite comfort food?
Favorite comfort food would have to be, because originally from South Jersey, it would have to be a cheese stick, fried onions.
Okay. Sounds good. And hobby?
I play the guitar.
Very cool. I did read that you play your guitar too loudly down in South Jersey, which is really cool. And if you had to recommend one book, what would it be?
Leaving mine aside, I would say a book by a guy named Richard Koch called The 80-20 Principle.
The 80-20 Principle, which basically states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your, is that one or no?
That's correct. He didn't invent that principle, but he really popularized it.
Right. It was a German principle originally, correct?
I think it was originally discovered by an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto.
Yes.
Who discovered when he was researching land records in Italy that, and some other countries, including Germany, by the way, that a vast majority of the wealth in terms of control of land was held by 20% or fewer of the population. Right. And he observed this, and then Richard popularized it, I guess, maybe 20, 30, maybe more years ago now. And, look into your business and you'll see the same thing, that, 20% of your sales force accounts for 80% of the sales, 20% of your products account for 80% of the profits, 20% of what you do day in, day out accounts for 80% of your results. So it's an important principle to understand.
Gotcha. Really good. I'm going to read that book. Only reason I knew about it is I was looking at the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week, and he has like a blurb that basically lives by that same principle of the 80-20 rule. I think
that's a great expression of that principle.
Yeah. John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate you spending your time with us.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, Tom.
Thank you for tuning into Motivation and Confidence, where we help you do your daily best. Like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Check us out on various platforms: Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Overcast, Castbox, SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, TuneIn, or Alexa Media.